Hello, welcome to my presentation. It is about how natural history collections can be useful for both conservation and education. So, what is a natural history collection? Well, they're archive collections of local biology. They provide long-term safekeeping on ecological specimens. They're information-rich, and as it says at the bottom of the slide, they are constantly collecting, so you get to see the composition of the local ecology change over time. So, what is my opinion? Well, I think natural history collections are incredibly important. I especially think that they matter a lot when it comes to conservation, because it helps us understand environmental changes over time and how organisms can respond to that. I think natural history collections are an important bridge between scientists and the general public, whether or not it's a school kid or a scientist from another profession, or even another student from another profession, like an art student. So, starting off, we have conservation. So, natural history collections can be used to track when species are introduced or help determine when a immigration event can be harmful to the local ecology. It can also be useful for monitoring population declines. This is great for targeted conservation because you need to decide which one needs to have more protection. It also helps understand endemicism and migrant species because when they are limited by range geographically, it can make them more vulnerable to stochastic events and anthropogenic threats. My second argument for conservation is by using NHCs, it can be possible to mark specific events that have happened over a time period and the resulting change in either the organism or the things around the organism. For instance, extinction events. We all know the dinosaurs and how their bones have shown up everywhere, and we can pinpoint exactly where their skeletons had disappeared from the fossil record by using radiocarbon dating on the skeletons that we collected. We can also figure out when, a recent extinction happened. For instance, maybe, some butterflies stopped showing up. We can base when they stopped existing by when specimens stopped being collected and when the last one was sighted. It can also let us track anthropogenic events like pollution events. This can be either atmospheric carbon or oil spills. A way to tell this is if you look at whatever is left on a specimen, for instance, maybe a bird, you can see either some oil, some tar, or some soot could be on the feathers of the skins of birds. Ongoing events can also be tracked, like ocean acidification, which is caused by global warming. A way this can be figured out via specimens is in organisms that have a calcified shell. You could look at the strength of their shell or the size of the organism, and that can be an indicator. My final point for conservation is about knowledge gaps. There are always new things being discovered, I have here roughly 86% of all species on the planet still remain unknown, and that's always going to be fluctuating because things are still changing. So it's super important that we have a record of this global diversity because biodiversity is essential for the identity of people and communities, well-being. It also, not just for the mental health and well-being of people, but it's also, they provide very important ecosystem services for us, like food, shelter. So we should be taking care of what we're a part of, otherwise bad things will happen, like the current extinction phase we're going through right now. Okay, so now we're on to something a little bit more fun after talking about how extinction is happening and scary things are happening. The other argument I'd like to make is why natural history collections are very useful for training the future generation of either scientists or just the general public. My next argument for natural history collections is that they can be a gateway for future pasts in the younger generations. I apologize, I'm biased about this, but it can facilitate engagement for kids on their own term, which is very important to me. Because the reason I'm super into biology and taxonomy is because when I was a kid, I would visit the Weird and Wonderful section in the museum all the time, and it was my favorite place to be. And it helped me learn because it was all very physical, and there was rules, but it let me figure things out on my own by just reading plaques and stuff instead of having it explained to me. And that freedom in learning can be very impactful for neurodivergent kids and people who struggle to fit into that uncompromising box that the current school system is made from. Digitizing the collection also helps add another interactive way of learning, as well as assist people who might have any sort of physical restrictions that might stop them from visiting in person. It might also just be safer for the specimens because it keeps them away from grubby little hands. Additionally, nature collections can help train students without them finding the biological specimen themselves and sample it, which makes it a bit safer for everyone involved because it's a bit dangerous sometimes running around in the wops. My last and final point, natural history collections can aid more than just the natural sciences. For example, taking samples from herbarium specimens for herbal medicines, also known as phytomedicines. Using the chemical materials from samples can show us either the plant itself has medicinal uses, or it can be made into some sort of medicine. It should be noted that every part of a plant would have to be sampled, so the seeds, the fruits, and the flowers, etc., because those parts could all have different chemical compounds that may or may not have detrimental effects. For example, the flesh of an apple being all good and tasty, while the seeds are famous for having cyanide, the poison, in them. Not enough to be lethal, but it's an interesting adaptation. Furthermore, collected specimens can be used for the tracking of epidemics. For example, when does a virus first show up, and what could it possibly mean for the population and the environment that they inhabit? In conclusion, for conservation, natural history collections can be used to monitor species declines and introductions, identify stochastic and anthropogenic events, and continuously contribute to global knowledge by discovering new things and filling in poorly understood gaps of data. And for education, it helps the younger kids engage in fun and different ways to suit their own individual learning styles. Digital collections help facilitate access to those who are physically restricted and can't visit in person. And it reaches into other fields of study like pharmacology and epidemiology. These are all my references, and I've tried my best to reference every single photo as best I could. All the illustrations, the small little drawings I made myself for this. I would also like to apologize for how many references I have. There's about 30 here. I went on a bit of a rampage, down a rabbit hole, whatever you call it, when it came to researching for this. Thank you for watching my presentation. I feel like I should have made it about sharks.